Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, so welcome to the first webinar of the Energy and Environment Working Group of ENoLL. We are focusing today on using the Living Lab approach to develop socially innovative energy communities. And you can move to the next slide. I'm just going to give you some housekeeping rules to start us off. This webinar is being recorded or will be recorded. So if you have any issues with that, please leave your camera off or let us know. If you could keep your microphone muted when you're not talking, that would be great. And in the first sessions, we'd like you to post your questions into the chat. And then we will ask the questions. You'll have a chance to ask them yourselves, and we'll have a discussion session at the very end. Next slide. So just a summary of the programme for today. We have 6 different speakers from Living Labs throughout Europe, and we also have the pleasure also of welcoming Craig Burton and Saket Saraf from Monash University and from the Cellular project in India as well. So we're keeping the best for last there. But the rest of the presentations are mostly focused on examples from the global north. But we're very happy to have this presentation from the global south as well. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to do just a quick introduction to the Energy and Environment Working Group. You'll find links in the chat to the details of this on the ENoLL website. We are a group of practitioners and researchers in the ENoLL network, and we're really focused on exploring the value of Living Labs and all the different opportunities that exist for collaboration and co-creating and networking together. And our overall objective is to really have high quality cross-fertilization of methodologies and approaches. So really happy to have such a diverse group of people here today. It's very exciting. And if we go to the next slide. This is just a quick outline of our action plan for this year. So today's webinar is obviously on energy communities, but we'll also have a whole range of different webinars for the rest of the year. And the next one will be in May. Evelina and Patricia are leading that one, and it's going to be on sustainable forests and living labs. But we have an exciting program for the rest of the year, so do check that out on the ENoLL website. And also, of course, Open Living Lab Days is coming up in September, so we hope to meet some of you there as well. Next slide. Okay, so today is about using the Living Lab approach to develop socially innovative energy communities, but there will be a second part to this webinar, which will be led by a different working group called the Digital Urban Systems and Solutions for Transitions Working Group. So they're really interested in energy communities as well, and they're currently planning a webinar which should happen in May. They'll give you more information about that later in this quarter. Next one. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a quick introduction to this topic. There are already many legal frameworks in place for sharing and for the production and selling of energy. There are many definitions of energy communities, but these are the 2 official ones from the European Union. So just for those who are not familiar with energy communities in particular, there's 2 types. So one is a renewable energy community, and the red 2 sets out the legal aspects for these types of communities, but it's not just restricted to electricity. You need to have a legal entity for an REC, and the members are generally individual persons, SMEs and municipalities. So large companies are generally not included in an REC. And there are governance requirements, and the geographical boundaries differ from country to country, but basically it's got to do with voltage or municipality, and it can be quite case by case. Then there's also a citizen energy community, and this is limited to electricity. Again, you have to have a legal entity. The membership, again, are the same, but there's no geographic limitation for a citizen energy community, depending, of course, on the country that you're in. Then it's also important to mention collective self-consumption. So this type of, let's say, grouping of consumers are, it's not under any particular legal entity. So there's no need for a legal entity for a collective self-consumption. And the scale can be very different depending on the country. So in Spain and France, for example, it's only allowed within a 2-kilometre range. But basically what this legislation allows us to do now in Europe, and you'll hear very soon from other countries as well, it allows prosumers to become active in the energy transition. But of course, it's not all that simple. I mean, there are thousands of energy communities already in Europe, particularly in the Netherlands, in Germany, and in Belgium. But really, we have to ask, how are these energy communities really driving the energy transition and driving social change? And really, how are we accelerating this change? So the context is evolving, and Living Labs are evolving very much with this context. We have a fantastic opportunity to, design the energy transition that we need and have whole system change. So some Living Labs are reinforcing more the institutionalized technological approach, while others are much more focused on radical social innovation. So the discussion today is, how do we make energy communities more socially innovative? And so where do Living Labs come in? Indeed, some of you there will be very expert in energy communities, but don't really know what a Living Lab is. There are many, many definitions. You'll find the ENoLL definition on their website. But just in summary, a Living Lab is an innovation intermediary. We orchestrate different actors from the public sector, the private sector, research and citizens in this public-private people partnership type setup. And citizens are very important in this co-creation. We co-design products and service, and we do this in a real life setting. So it's not just in a lab, it's actually going out and understanding the real needs and problems of citizens and users. But this activity needs to create social value, and we do this using lots of different innovation tools. So where is the connection now between Living Labs and energy communities? So the role for Living Labs in energy communities are as an institutional actor. So it's not just as a one-off project that ends and moves on. We have the opportunity to be a trusted intermediary and to be important in this transition. Our real role is in sharing knowledge and in reducing the risk at the very early stages of the development of energy communities, but also throughout the life cycle. So we do context analysis. We look at the legal, political and economic situation, which is very, very different in each of the countries. And you'll hear that through the examples we're going to give you today. Our key role is in integrating stakeholders, so citizens, government, business and research, of course. We can run innovative pilots on things like dynamic pricing, incentives and different aspects of social innovation. And of course, impact assessment is absolutely key. Social innovation is really something we need to consider in terms of how we're having impact in energy communities, because there's a real potential for spillover effects, benefits in terms of energy sufficiency and in terms of energy poverty, for example. And then there's scaling up. So Living Labs have a key role in enabling energy communities to scale up. So that's the introduction to the topic. I'm going to hand over now to our first presenter, who is, next slide, thank you, Andrej Mileovic. And Andrej is from ADP ZID Living Lab in Montenegro. And he's going to give you an example of some research that their Living Lab has done on decentralizing the European energy market and how this has led to an understanding of how to develop more socially innovative energy communities. Thank you very much, Andrej.
Thank you, Fiona. Hello, everyone. It's really a pleasure and honor to be here and share some of the insights from our work at ADP ZID in Montenegro. Well, basically, as Fiona was saying, I'll give some insight into the way we kind of use the research and the research finding from the group of people I've shown on this slide to sort of influence and the stakeholders to advance the thinking and provide some recommendation and visions for market decentralization and emergencies of this innovative energy communities. We are an NGO from Montenegro, ADPZ, which is a social impact accelerator. We have around 20 to 25 people working there. And we do all sorts of projects with social awareness, social impact in mind, starting from energy, innovation, circular economy, and so on. So next slide, please. So we started this quite a way ago, maybe like during Corona, and then we kind of slowed down and then we progressed further. So the project stretched on, this project on exploring green energy transition potential in Montenegrin transport system. The reason why I say this is that things are moving quite quickly. So the thing is, we kind of stretched the project for a long duration of time, and we saw the changes in the regulatory aspects in the European Union. We saw some recommendations, changes in Montenegro as well, and so on. So basically, why we started the multidisciplinary approach, we wanted to bring industry, government, and civil sector together with us, which is a team of young researchers. We applied the quadruple helix model, which is bring everyone in, start discussing, show the research, provide the thinking, and hopefully move the things forward. So the research area we looked at was the broad areas such as energy, economy, law. We did mathematical modeling and engineering, and I will show you at the second part of the presentation. I'll try to show you some of the research of areas and the sort of high-level thinking on how the research can help all of these stakeholders, how it can advance their thinking and provide new insight and bring the changes to introducing the social communities into the energy markets and the system and so on. So next slide, please. So in sort of more detail, we wanted to see how the renewable energy can be integrated as a source of energy and a market player in the transport market. So we looked at this independent solar energy electric vehicle charging station, how they can be integrated in the transport system, and then to harmonize how this can create a new market and so on. And we started by thinking, oh, how can we make these consumers participate into the energy market for transport and provide some regulatory and legislative measures. Well, there are some practical works we did as well. This early thinking was actually not that easy to even project and kind of put forward, because then we started seeing that there's a lot of impediments on the way in terms of the regulatory, in terms of how the electric system works, in terms of how the grid works. We talked to the grid operators, to the energy company, to the ministries, and so on. So it hasn't turned out to be that easy as we initially thought. So I'll give you some of the things in the next slide next slide, please. I'll give you some of the things from the European regulation. These are pretty fresh, like from the 2023, the latest. We didn't get the ones from the last year because some of them are not available, but I'll give you some of the things that provide you the setting of what is needed for the transport and what are the drivers and challenges. Like the first thing is that the vision is that the charging station needs to be placed everywhere on the road. So it's like 60 kilometers maximum distance, which is quite an objective. And then we have these huge objectives by 2030 and 2035 to reduce the emission of the CO2 gases. Then we have we should have zero to emissions by 2035. It sounds a bit ambitious to us, and perhaps it is, but these are the drivers of the whole change. And even beside the technical sort of practical distance separation requirement for the charging station, we have a projected need for 1 million charging stations, and we also have the objective to include the renewables, the renewables into this system and integrated in the grid and so on, and that there's billions of plans being laid out to sort of help this process. So if I can have the next slide, please. I can have the next slide. Yes. So I'm giving you a list of few more drivers and changes, but I just want to say that besides these projections, when you look at the data on the ground, the progress is evident. There is electrification of transport everywhere, but it's not as fast as the figures seem to indicate. Because, for example, there's only 1.2% of electric cars on the European roads in 2023, although the registration have increased significantly, although the money is there. Some countries have a huge percentage, a greater percentage, close to 4%, perhaps Norway, Germany, and so on. But the numbers of cars is not huge. Even the fact that, for example, in Germany, the selling of the car has slowed down when the incentives were cut. It indicates that the wait for the electrification of transport is happening, but it's not really smooth. And so we looked at the practical reasons. So please, the next slide. Yeah, so we looked at the practical reasons. This is a block of flats where my parents live in Montenegro, socialist built, and so on, very dense. A lot of parking places, a lot of people parking in the non-parking places, and so on. So we looked at these practical things, and we don't really see electric cars there. We see electric cars in some other places with the low-rise buildings, with cars, with households, and things like that. So even these practical things like where are you going to park the cars, where are going to be the chargers for the car, then the thing is talking to people and everything, because of the range anxiety, electric cars are typically not bought for people who want to travel long distances, especially international distances, because you want to rely on the charging stations where you're going to charge, and charging takes time, and so on. On the other hand, there is a plethora of different charging connections in different countries, different standards, different speeds and makes. It's not synchronized. Batteries are not removable. There's only one Chinese company that does replacement of batteries on the spot. The other companies are not doing it, as you know. So there is quite a lot of practical issues with the electrification of transport, which we think are quite relevant and need to be addressed, at least in a country like Montenegro, which is trying to sort of catch up with the progress in electrification of transport with other European countries. So things like location, space, and availability problem in dense urban environments are an issue. Funnily enough, because I also work and live in London, funnily enough, in London, in dense urban areas, the chargers are empty. You would assume that there's more cars there, but the people are not really buying cars who live in dense urban areas. This is my conclusion. But then you have people who live in houses, more distant area, who have their own parking places, who would buy an electric car. So the progress is not really overwhelming, and it's not catching up with everyone. So yeah, you can move to the next slide. So we saw these new market players. These are social sort of side of things where the citizens can participate, groups of citizens or individuals, form communities as a team, or be part of a sort of a virtual stakeholder that participates in the market, which we can have a solar powered charging station. There's, of course, a prosumer, and even things like a localized DC power plant, which is localized, gives electricity to for example, a village or a local community, and so on. All these things are possible. They are sort of how can I say, they can be usually deployed by independent market players on the energy market, but the regulation is, the regulation needs to be looked at. So the next slide, please. Yeah. So I don't know why the title of the slide is not showing up, but anyway. So we looked at the laws for the prosumers, Prosumers have become were a hot thing maybe 5, 7, 8 years ago. But if you talk to the grid operators, they are major concerned with them because there's so many prosumers now that during the sunny intervals, a lot of the grid operators are really having problems getting all this electricity back, and they're crashing the system. I've seen it across Europe. It happens in Montenegro in some places where there's a lot of prosumers returning sending back the energy if they don't need it to the grid. So in terms of the legislation, the law, there's a series of law, but there's this document on the bottom which kind of summarizes everything, 2022. I think it's pretty recent. And it says that energy production cannot be the main activity of a prosumer. So it's really, in terms of its commercial activity, to set a boundary, a barrier to really for its expansion, especially in the transport market. There's quite a lot of issues, and if you want to sell the energy, there are serious taxes there, and if you are going to get a relief for a tax, then it's probably going to be in places where grid expansion is difficult, and you are kind of an innovation flagship sort of project or so on, which the government is going to support. So next slide, please.
Andrea, sorry to interrupt you. You still have 3 minutes for your
3 minutes.
presentation.
Oh,
it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
so
you.
I have 3 minutes. Okay. So I'll go quickly through this. I thought I have more time. I'm really sorry. So we engaged a group of people into modeling. So we developed a model, and we thought this is available everybody, but it's not. We developed a model how to project the demand of the traffic, how to project the road density and so on, and how to place the charging stations on the road to fill in these requirements for 60 kilometers and more. So next slide, please. So we did quite a lot of research, and we have a few papers on that, and we've set out a model which is now available and published to play around with the distribution of the charging station according to certain criteria, which you can see here, so according to the generic function that we developed. And we can do it for the roads, we can do it for city areas and so on. And this can help even the government and planning to see the demand and to see the investment needed for the charging stations. So because I have 3 minutes, I will hurry. If you can go to the next slide, please. So we said in the future we might have a competition between independent charging stations and the ones connected to the grid. We kind of generalize it. It's a very abstract way, but you can have a case where you can have the regular on-grid charging station and you can have solar charging station, at least during the sunny interval. It's very abstracted, and the scene becomes like this. So if you go to the next slide, please. I'll just make a final conclusion on the thing. So it becomes like this. It becomes a game. In terms of the electricity market, we presented it to the people to the stakeholders. It can become a game between the on-grid operator with a certain price, and it become a game between the independent virtual solar generator provided by the community, which can compete constructively on the transport market. And this is we went back to the famous Cornot economics model of the game of two generators fighting for the electricity and so on. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, and so it becomes like this. You have a game theory kind of setup, like a prisoner's dilemma setup, where you can have a game between two generators, virtual generators, grouped across the country, providing there is an equal number of these, they're equally separated on the roads, and providing that the solar energy generator is always going to be slower and a bit more and less expensive, a bit more cheaper than the regular, more powerful, quicker charger. This was the assumption we kind of put forward. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is an example how we can, for example, through research, recommend to the operators, look, if we have this setting, and there's actually different settings, if there is less number of virtual solar generators and so on, we can have an evolutionary theory. We're looking at that and we are providing these figures, but we can say, just I'll finish with this slide. If you look at these things in the corner, if you look at the the left top corner, the percentage is multiplied by the retail price. So if there is a free price market, if you see in the left corner, there's going to be a competition, and the state, the grid operator could actually reduce its prices and destroy the solar, because it's going to be quicker. It's going to be quicker than the solar operator, and people will choose sort of on-grid fast. In this case, even almost the same price charges on the car market. Sorry, this is a very generalized view. I don't have time to present everything, but in the case, if you see in the bottom corner, if there is a national equilibrium case, for example, where a regulator or government can sort of provide the boundaries and say to the guys, look, the guys from the solar energy side, you can reduce the prices on this much, and the grid operators would be more expensive than you by this much. You would sort of achieve the equilibrium, and you would incentivize the market to kind of help the independent energy providers come onto the market and not be the competitors really to the on-grid operated charging stations, because they also have a lot of investments to lay out the cables, to be at every 60 kilometers on the road and so on. So we kind of use this approach to kind of tell them, look, there is a way you can find an equilibrium and harmonic solution. So the next slide, please, and this is the final slide. We did a bit more than just this abstract view. We kind of developed a utility function kind of zero game modeling approach, where you can see, for example, a utility function for a state or regular, and welfare of society is one of the factors, and so on. And we looked at the different charging stations because, of course, sun is not available every day, the whole of the day, and so on and so forth. So we looked at the models of the charging station, how they can function depending on the time of the day, how they can be integrated with on-grid, off-grid, and hybrid, and these sort of things. So these were the sort of research way of kind of pushing the understanding and the awareness of what can be done on the energy sector to push these new models of community engagement and on the energy market. Sorry for part two.
Thanks a lot, Andre.
Thank you.
Okay, so a very research introduction to the topic, and shows really how in depth actually Living Labs can go in terms of researching and exploring different market scenarios. And of course, we all know that mobility is really, really important in terms of making this decentralized energy communities market work. We see that very locally here, even in our own Living Labs, where we really need to start with the conversation on mobility in order to get to the conversation about energy communities. So that's all very important. So we have a couple of minutes for questions. So if you have some questions, please put them into the chat. I seem to have a message saying I can't use the chat. I don't know if anybody else has an issue with that. They might just make a signal with the camera if they can't use the chat there. I don't know if it's a centralized.
It says it's only
setting.
Available. Yeah.
It says it's only available during the reunion. So I don't know if you need to change that, Alina, somewhere to allow everybody to use the chat. So. Yeah, I mean, my question for you is really, where do you go next with this? Okay, so look, a lot of this is very technical and very much based on, your knowledge of economics and stats and all the engineering aspect as well. But, bringing it down to the ground level, how do you imagine an experimentation or an experiment could happen, at the local level with people in their community who want to, exchange the energy that they're creating on their own homes with these chargers on the motorway or wherever it is? How do you imagine an experiment might look so that you can really make this concrete for local citizens?
Well, we talked to, for example, the regulators are saying, and the laws in Montenegro have been recently introduced for selling the energy in the transfer and bringing the new kind of charging stations. People, they in terms of the renewable energy and coastal community members, the answer is not really. I mean, they are in the beginning. They are saying they have to be regulated, but because the law does not exist preventing them from doing it, they don't really have an answer. They can say they can engage in the market and sell the energy the way they want to sell it, but at the same time, peer-to-peer selling of energy is not really something that direct selling of energy is not really something that falls within the regulatory domain, and it has to be. So we don't really know where the boundaries are. This was the conclusion with the regulators. In terms of the other activities, the grid operator was very concerned with the charging station and the transport requirements, because Montenegro has got a lot of remote roads and it's a really mountainous country and it's populated in few parts of the country. So it's not really easy to ensure it. But then when we explained the whole process and we're not competitors and so on, they were really happy with the possibility of having independent providers of energy somewhere along the roads and so on. Finally, in terms of our activities, we are building a laboratory space in the ADPZ, and we are looking at the practical things on car transformations from the fossil fuel to electric fuel to electric batteries. We're looking at perhaps maybe even some of these hybrid options for solar charging stations in the future, and providing these to as practical components for the market and so on.
So we've got two very good questions in the chat. I'm going to just read them out, but we're not going to answer them now. I'm going to let you, Andre, think about them, and you can answer them at the end, because we've got 20 minutes at the end for discussion. So we'll come back to that. But they're with regards to how you've communicated the outputs of this research to policymakers. And I think that's a question we can deal with at the end commonly across all of the presentations. And there's a very specific technical question. Thank you very much, Saket, for asking that. But let's try and deal with that at the end as well, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next speaker. Thank you very much. So really happy to have Alicia Cercia and Melchiorina Mirella from Torino City Lab and the commune of Torino. I'm not sure how that sounded in my Italian accent, but thank you very much for joining us. We are really happy to have examples from a city living lab and a commune that are working very much to try to get energy communities up and running in the city of Turin. Handing over to you, Alicia.
Thank you, Fiona, and thank you, everybody. I'm very happy to be here and having the opportunity to talk about what Torino, what our city is doing, which are the activities in living labs, and which are the role we are imagining for them in fostering local renewable energy communities. Before starting, next slide, please. Before starting with energy communities, let me say a few words. No, there should be one slide before this one. Okay, there's some problems, but it's not a problem. I would like to say a few words on the project that led Torino into the ENoLL project. I'm referring to Torino City Lab that was launched by the city to create an innovative open-air laboratory. The goal was to transform the city into an hub where emerging technologies and activities connected can be tested to enhance citizen quality of life and to boost regional competitiveness. It was thanks to Torino City Labs that in 2018 the city became a member of ENoLL, and we are also trying today to reinforcing our commitment to smart cities, social innovation, and cutting-edge technologies. We developed several initiatives such as Torino City Love in 2020, that was a sort of project design to support citizens during the challenges of pandemic. Open Living Lab Days in 2022. That was an international event hosted to bring together innovators from across Europe on technological and social innovation, and a Living Lab summit in Italy co-organized by Torino. Which our key focus on in Torino City Lab project. We are looking to smart and sustainable mobility in energy and environment, health and well-being, culture and tourism, and smart cities. But our key focus today is to create and not create, but to support the renewable energy communities that are that citizens are creating locally. In particular, the Torino, the city, has established an help desk to support the development of RECs. And we recently approved REC bylaws that was created and imagined within another European project, within the Let's Gov project. That is a European initiative involving 9 Italian cities selected in the European mission Smart and Climate Neutral Cities by 2030. Probably everybody knows this project because it's very important. It aims to transform 100 European cities in climate neutral innovation hubs by 2030. So about 20 years ahead the European general targets. And Torino, with other 8 Italian cities, was chosen for this ambitious goal. So we develop what is called Climate City Contract, and we outlined 31 strategic actions across 5 key areas: energy use in buildings, transport, bus management, agriculture and forestry, and what is the topic of this webinar, energy systems. In particular, in June 2023, the 9 Italian cities involved in the mission decided to launch another project, what I already mentioned, the Let's Gov project, and the topic of all Turin project and action was the support in create and develop REC. So Torino recognized that REC and collective self-consumption groups are essential instruments for the energy transition, and we are trying to support them economically, socially, and technically as we can. What we are doing, which are the actions of the cities in order to support, concretely support our RECs. Next slide, please. Okay, our experiment aim to engage local stakeholders and the relevant networks to foster collaboration. We are organizing many events that want to be open to the citizens and to the association. We are trying to identify public buildings in order to share, to host the photovoltaic that will be shared with the REC, the local REC. We are exploring new governance models and public-private partnership to enhance the efficiency of this project. We are monitoring the development of REC. For us, one of the main important aims to reach is to have numbers and data about what is happening locally in the city about REC and self-consumption groups. and we want to provide technical, legal, and economic support to ensure their long-term sustainability. Next slide, please. To do this, to reach these aims, we are implementing initiatives to combat energy poverty. We are trying to ensure administrative and economic transparency in the REC operations. So we are enhancing public awareness and credibility. We think that we are trying to create a label that we will be recognized to all the REC that will be aligned with the values and the criteria found by the city in the bylaw. And we are trying to guide the citizens and association to create RECs that will last in the future years, and in which the cities will be a partner, could be a partner, and why not a member of this REC in the future. So I hope to have underlined which is the strict synergy between the growth of these innovative social structures that are renewable energy communities and the objectives of ENoLL, what we are talking about during this webinar. We want to promote the co-creation of innovative solutions, and we want to create events that can be joined not only by citizens, but also by businesses and other local administrations. The main points we are trying to develop are social and technological innovations, because it's clear that energy communities drive the development of cutting-edge technologies and of social solution. They could be an answer to the big problem of energy poverty that we are living in our cities. We are looking to participation and innovative governance models that were one of the topic of the Let's Gov project. So we would like to create events in which community members became the decision-making, the stakeholders, not only of RECs in general, but also for the city in particular. And one of the key points for us is the education. So we are working to involve in this project also schools and students of different ages. As you can see by this slide, the first step toward establishing the help desk was to foster a participation and co-design the event where the city of Torino organized. It was entitled Torino Towards Climate Neutrality, the Role of Energy Communities and Self-Consumption Groups. The event gathered approximately 200 participants, and includes third sector organization and engaged citizens in general. So the first step, the primary objective was to collect input, suggestions, and needs from those who will be the main beneficiaries of the services that we are imagining through the culture or RECs help desk. This approach, I think, it's my opinion, but the results talk for me, proved particularly effective in engaging the citizens and association in create new and innovative renewable energy communities. Which are the planned actions, next steps of the city? We want to establish a physical help desk in each neighborhood to provide an in-person support to citizens. we want to develop, we are working to develop a virtual help desk. You are looking at what we are thinking for the digital help desk. As you can see, we are thinking to a base level, low level, that is only for information. So we will open a platform, a digital platform, where citizens will be able to find the main legal, technical, administrative information, not only locally, but national informations. We are thinking to concrete direct support for people, so a sort of pre-orientation pathway with which people will have an insight about benefits and the feasibilities also of REC, but also they will be able, thanks to this platform, to understand which are the best solutions for each group of citizens due to the local position, due to the economical situation, and to the technical implementation of the group. We are working to facilitate a matching between RECs and citizens, and between people who can finance the installation of photovoltaic, and the people who have the surfaces, who have the places and the space to create this kind of technologies. And for a startup and students, we are looking for some example of gamification and some ways to spread the culture of energy transition between citizens and students. Next step, I don't want to take too much time on our events, but as you can see, we already organized an event for open to all citizens. In September 2024, we organized a first training meeting for our employees, for the city employees of the 8 districts, that will give information and support directly to the citizens. And now we are waiting for the activation of the bylaws that has been approved by the city council a few weeks ago. Which are the barriers of this long pathway towards the spread of RECs? I can say we face a lot of critical issues. Next step, please. Between I only write the main barriers encountered. We surely had some difficulties in the coordination, all the city departments involved in the energy transition, and to find the right channels to arrive to the citizens that are a big stakeholder for the cities. We faced big problems with the national legislation that was not consolidated until February 2024. So we have to wait the national legislator in order to start all our projects. We had some difficulties in reaching the right channel with GSA, that is the energy service operator in Italy. And now I have to say we had a wonderful relationship with the professionals who works for GSA, but it was very hard to find the right channel, and we are trying to mapping the emerging REC and the group of auto-consumption. This is another obstacle, another barriers for us, because the city is big, and it was very difficult to arrive to the citizens involved in this kind of activities. But thanks to the events I talked before, and thanks to the digital channels, we are spreading good mapping also in this way. So I think to have
Thank you,
finished
Alessia.
the presentation, and I open to questions.
Thank you for this very rich example. We do have one question there, and I think we can just look at it now because it really is linked to the last thing that you said there. So it's can you give an example of what would be like a good match and a poor match between like a group of people in a renewable energy community? Obviously, it's very technical as well. You know, it's about who's consuming what electricity when, but are there any other aspects to consider in terms of matching different people within a community?
Okay, in Italy we have national law that oblige us to work under the same come si può dire? Sorry, but it's very technical. I have to translate cabina. Primary cabin. I don't know if the term in English is correct, but people have to work together inside the same place, about 4 or 5 kilometers. So we need to work and to create the right equilibrium between production and consumers. So a good match maybe could be the equilibrium between producer and consumers is very difficult to reach, because we need a lot of producers, sorry, but much more consumers. This is because in Italy the National Energy Authority gives some money to each REC if we are able to find the right equilibrium in auto consumption. And so this is surely a key point in order to create the good relationship between REC, and also to find the economical equilibrium, because many RECs are starting counting on the economical incentives of the national authority.
Yeah, so this will all be discovered in the implementation phase coming up. I'm sure you have many more challenges ahead in
yes.
So I think tracking the learnings and the impact are, of course, going to be key. So just in the interest of time, we're going to move on, but there are some questions in the chat there that we'll come back to you with, Alicia. You can see them there. They're about safety standards, etc. So we'll try and discuss those there at the end. Okay. Wonderful. So I'm going to move on to our next speaker, who is a close colleague of ours here at HESSO, but she works at the University of Applied Sciences in Western Switzerland. So the pleasure of introducing Professor Ulrike Sturm, who is going to give you a very concrete example of a tool that she has developed to help experts support energy communities development, and how that has been tested and co-created and applied in an energy community in Lucerne in Switzerland. Handing over to you, Ulrike. So you have about between 10 and 15 minutes. Okay.
Thank you very much for this friendly introduction, Fiona, and I will try to keep the time. We developed a specific tool where we can work in a real-life setting. And we did this in the context of a huge energy research project financed by the Swiss Federal Office of Energy, which is called SWEET. The program is called SWEET, which stands for Swiss Energy Research for the Energy Transition. And the project is called Lantern. And Lantern, it has a complicated construction of this name, but basically it deals with living labs and tries to find solutions in different sectors like living and housing, mobility, leisure, and others. I don't want to give a full picture of the project, and also in neighborhoods. Tries to find out, using living labs, how to promote energy transition. And I represent Lucerne. Specifically, I will talk about the QUBE project, which is a living lab project within Living Labs Lucerne, within the Lantern project. So far, for the context, you can look it up and read about it in following the link that's in the chat. So our specific goal in the work package we do in Lantern is to promote energy transition in neighborhoods. And we use living labs as a real life setting to test how this works in Switzerland. I talk about energy cooperation now because it differs a little bit from the European definitions Fiona gave. It means we are a bit more open. We are not bound, especially in Switzerland, we are not bound to European legislation, so we are a bit more open in the approach. We try to enable energy cooperation at neighborhood level to bring together mainly private homeowners, and let's say also small and medium, there might also be involved small and medium companies or institutions, especially institutions like, for example, a home for the elderly or others. And it's especially sharing heating, the project I'm talking about, but we also look at electricity, and now it's more or less in parallel. Why the neighborhood level? We have the impression that proximity and neighborhood are both a prerequisite for a driving force for a huge amount of living areas in Switzerland. And in dense neighborhoods, better solutions can be found together. There is a publication we just published, just if you stay for a second, because the publication is here at the bottom, Terminologies and Concepts of Energy Corporations in Europe, a systematic review of characteristics, potentials, and challenges, that was published in the Energy Research and Social Science Journal. And we try to really get an overview of what's happening across Europe. So if you're interested in the terminology part. Thank you. The next slide, please. We work along the so-called Living Lab Integrative Process, the LLIP. You find a scheme of it here at the bottom. And we regard this as the energy transition as a social-technical process with certain steps you need for for neighborhood-related projects to promote energy cooperation. You see here how we split down that process. I won't talk about the LLIP now because this would be maybe a different seminar, but I hope you are familiar in principle with this LLIP, so that you go through the problem space, solution space, and deployment space phases. At the neighborhood level in our QUBE project, which is can be translated as neighborhood-based energy cooperation, quartierbezogene Energiekooperation in German. We followed these steps along the line, which can be matched to the which match the LLIP process. And there is a social line and a technical line. So you move on the social line, you move from activation, interest raising, vision, commitment, coordination. And on the technical line, you move along analysis, calculation, feasibility check, planning, and implementation. And as you see, it goes from one to the other. So it's like a little bit like a ping pong line here, which also follows the LLIP idea. Thank you. And within this process, we developed a specific tool. And now I really want to talk about the tool. It is called Morphological Box. A Morphological Box is a tool that already exists. We didn't invent it as such. It is a multidimensional matrix describing possible options in a comprehensive and neutral manner, and it collects possible variations. And we created one specifically for energy corporations at the neighborhood level. It lists dimensions on the y-axis and options on the x-axis. We had different disciplines involved, which is very much in the DNA of the Lantern project, that it's a multidisciplinary project, and we have urbanism, geography, sociology, law, business engineering, and mechanical engineering. We have experts involved in our work package, and the Morphological Box reflects all these different disciplines, which are very necessary for energy corporation projects. Next slide, please. Here you see the same process, and you see where this morphological box comes in. It helps to picture the now, it helps to describe the vision, show dependencies between different fields, define options for check, and to discuss the feasibility on the way to the commitment and to the decision between a group of very differently minded people, which you find at neighborhood level. Next slide, please. So we look at different disciplines, at different topics within that morphological box. It's topological and structural, it's organizational, economic, social, legal, and technical. And the box can be used for different purposes. For analysis, you analyze a certain neighborhood and look at what it is like when you start a project and a process. You can use it so you can use it for the assessment of energy cooperatives, and you can systematize existing energy cooperatives. For example, across Switzerland, you can systematize existing ones using the logic of the box. And what I want to talk about here now is you can use it as a tool for creation, used for the participatory development of a vision of future energy cooperation. Next slide, please. So this is what it looks like. It doesn't look particularly pretty now, but we work on it. So you see that you have the dimensions, like topological, it's the location. Where is it? Is it urban, suburban, or whatever? What is the settlement structure, uses of buildings? You see social indicators like social cohesion, and there are many others. And you see the options where you can pick one, or you can also pick two, depending, or three. We didn't make it pick one box, which would also be a possibility of a morphological box, because that wouldn't have described the sphere of neighborhoods exact enough. So thank you. This is just the first two dimensions, the first two topics I show here in detail for the box, because I want to show you how it works and not to present the box in detail. So of course we have a legal part, we have an organizational part, but very important, of course, it's the technical part, where you can see the coverage of thermal energy demand, for example, or the types of renewables used, and you always see the options you can pick. So when applying the box, you go through the box according to where you are. So we make a choice of dimensions you use for the task you have. Please, the next slide. I just explained it to you using an example. This is our QUBE case in Lucerne. It's called Gartenheim. This is, you can see what it looks like. You can use it as a tool of analysis. It is a settlement that was built in the 1940s, and it has roughly around 50 row houses, and accordingly about 50 owners. And it is in need of a new energy supply, and it also has restrictions because it is a historic site. So if you go on to the next slide, please, next. So you can hear the picture, the now. What you can do here, you can say what it is. It is urban, it's a single family terraced housing, it's residential. Available space is residential roof space, and it's at the back of this list, so you can't see it because it would have been too tiny. It has public underground that you could use. It's not just private underground, but also public underground that you could use for a new energy system. It is a historic site, and you have only local individuals. There's no one else involved for the moment, and the level of participation, how they work together there, it started early and it was frequent. The initiator, however, was a public actor. It came from the project, so it came from the university and it came from the city of Lucerne. This is just to show you how the box works. And of course, you can go through all the other dimensions that are applicable to the now, which we pre-select for people who want to work with it. Please, the next slide. If you apply it as a tool of creation, you also again choose the dimensions that are applicable, or we would prepare it for someone who wants to use it. You choose the options that apply to your case. You may also add options if there is something missing, especially, let's say, a new technology or a new grid, for example, newly charging stations or whatever, to pick that up. Combine the options and dimensions, and you can see what the combinations are that are possible, because some options exclude other options at another level. And you try to determine the best combination, which could then go into a feasibility check by specialists and experts. Next slide, please. So this is what it came to in that Gartenheim settlement. They wanted to use, on a technical level, an ambient heat source, especially geothermal, in public underground. And so they wanted to combine it with photovoltaics, and it is the idea of partially self-producing, a collective attempt of cooperation, and it is focused on purely renewables. So, and the picturing the now, of course, was purely fossil. So that's the change from picturing the now to using it as a creative tool. I cannot go into details here. I just hope you understand how the box works. And I just show you what the result was. If you go on, please. It's an energy network and seasonal storage, organized as an energy cooperative, as a legal entity. Gartenheim would generate and store the energy it needs on its own site. And there is a diagram of the idea that they would really use the underground of what is now a soccer field. And it's a public soccer field, and would, in the end, be a public soccer field again with the technique underground. Thank you. So next steps, we want to apply the morphological box in different living labs, and Seung Living Lab, where Fiona is responsible, will be one of them. It's an idea of bringing about a scale up so that it becomes really a tool that can and will be used at many places. We want to integrate it into a capacity building part of the Lantern project. And then what is most interesting to you, I think, we are about to develop an analog format for co-creation workshops, a card set. We already tested it, but we are now in the process of really making it work. And also think about a kind of digital format. And we are in the process of writing a practitioner's manual for it. So this is what's on the program. And now, of course, I will be happy to answer your questions either now or later in the discussion section. And I just had some questions to you, which you can read here.
Thanks so much, Ulrika. So it's a really concrete example of a tool. Well, it's a prototype, obviously, at the moment that Living Labs and different innovation intermediaries can use to really help guide all the different experts in the room to help them to develop an energy community. So I'd just like everybody to think about what kind of tools you use in your work, whether you're actually working in an energy community or a living lab, and maybe think about how this tool could be then applied in that its situation. So we can come back and discuss that. I don't see any specific questions in the chat at the moment, but I mean, having a toolbox is a key part of every living lab, and we're really looking forward to having the chance to really use this this toolbox or this tool. We tested it already with a citizen energy community in Romania at the Open Living Labs conference last year. Through a workshop on one of the days there. So it's having different rounds of iteration, and of course we'd love the opportunity to be able to test that with an organization or another living lab that's trying to develop an energy community. So do let us know your thoughts, and also what other tools you have in your toolbox for helping to guide energy communities. So this brings us on to, and we may get more questions, Ulrika, and we'll have a wider discussion about tools and how they support us at the end. But this brings us on to ENoLL, because ENoLL are supporting a European project called LIFE-BECKON and have been giving a, let's say, capacity building program with a number of different tools to try to help in the dissemination of energy communities in this particular project. So Elena is going to tell us very quickly about that, because she's been involved with this project. And we're very happy to say, us at Energy Living Lab at Sion, we've been also participating in the LIFE-BECKON project, but as a replicator organization where we take this capacity building now and we try to use it. So we've been really benefiting from this exchange with all the different energy communities throughout Europe through the LIFE-BECKON project. So Elena.
Super, thank you, Fiona. Hi, everyone. Thank you first very much for being here today with us. So as Fiona already said, I'm Elena Makuschiari. I'm a project manager in capacity building, trainer at the European Network of Living Labs, and also from ENoLL side, the specific person of contact working closely with Fiona for the Energy and Environment Working Group. And I will be bringing today in the discussion LIFE-BECKON, as Fiona said, as an energy community related project that actually integrate Living Labs tools and methodologies in its work. So just in a nutshell, LIFE-BECKON aims on accelerating the deployment of energy communities across Europe by providing comprehensive support mechanisms that mostly targeting public authorities, municipalities, promoters, and local action groups. And we aim to achieve this support of the deployment of energy communities through our technical assistance and replication. So we do have 3 demonstration sites in the project in Avila, Spain, Copenhagen, Denmark, and Sofia, Bulgaria, that are there as setting up their own technical assistant offices, and we do have in place the replicators program that Fiona mentioned, so we can help other initiatives or organizations setting their own TAOs. So for these TAOs, we have a step-by-step guidance, a so-called cookbook, so a comprehensive toolbox that provides a wide range of tools, like technical, financial tools that can help the support of energy community, of setup of energy communities throughout the whole stages, capacity building as well to raise awareness and knowledge around energy communities, and also matchmaking opportunities for bringing together stakeholders interested in those local ecosystems that want to come together to set their own communities. So we'll focus today on the capacity building aspect that Fiona also mentioned before. So we at ENoLL led and designed the LIFE-BECKON capacity building program that actually aims of simulating the active involvement of stakeholders in the setup and deployment and operation of energy communities. Of course, in order to support these technical assistant offices and in order to have skill facilitators, in order to do the work on site with this, we follow the training the trainers approach in order to have them at the end be able to raise awareness and knowledge around energy communities. And since it is a project that is not operating within Living Lab's environment or setting up energy communities per se, we did use the Living Lab approach and methods in the way of thinking and actually implementing the work that we did. So we developed a video series of thematic video lessons. We had a series of interactive webinars, and we developed a new methodology from scratch for supporting the setup. So for the video series, we had videos of thematic lessons, let's say, around core topics related with energy communities as derived from the needs assessment that we conducted for the project, ranging from the definitions of what Fiona mentioned in the beginning of the webinar about the types of energy communities and the benefits they have, stakeholder engagement methodologies and communication strategies, governance structures, regulatory compliance, financing tools for energy communities, and so on. Also, we had a series of interactive webinars with experts from the project, but also externals delving deeper into some topics such as how to initiate and plan for energy communities, financing possibility, but also operational excellence and sustainable long-term management of an energy community. And lastly, we did develop this new methodology called Open Innovation Journey that actually was inspired by open innovation and the Living Lab approach. And its aim was to support municipalities and technical assistant offices to set up their own energy communities or support the development of communities in their own ecosystems. Of course, besides the open innovation, the Living Lab approach, the methodology was inspired by the project itself and the aim that we want to achieve through it, and of course the different stages of setting up an energy community from the initiation all the way to operation. This is a methodology of concrete 7 steps running all the way from the purpose or the why. Why do we want to set up the energy community? We want to support it, depending on the role and the hat you may have. You change the question and then moving through different Living Lab tools. So analyzing the context, analyzing the dynamics of the stakeholders, environment, and what are the solutions you might want to bring to this community. You arrive all the way to step 6 for the open innovation journey itself before getting to validate it with your stakeholders and then have a clear implementation plan to pursue the solutions you came up with. So you see that steps from 1 to 5 are really preparatory in the sense that provide you setting the scene and the context for the open innovation journey itself that really starts on step 6. And here, again, it is another methodology being actually based on the Living Lab integrative process that Eureka also mentioned before. Just very brief to mention for those that might not be so familiar with it. So this is a methodological framework using certain methodological framework developed by Joel Masterling and the Energy Living Lab with providing a tool that can actually help to guide innovation and the development of solutions all the way from the problem space with the problem identification to the deployment space, real life application of the solutions, making sure that the solutions are co-created with the relevant stakeholders, but also meeting specific and real needs and preferences. So what we did with this methodology is we actually matched these spaces with the different stages of setting up an energy community. And what we provide at this step 6 at the end is actually a big matrix that you can go through with your team to reflect on those different stages and reflect on the journey they can take with each of the stakeholders that needs to be involved before getting to validate it with them. So for every step 6 included, but all the rest, they come with clear instructions on how to use it, time indication, and of course, template that you can use either online or in person, like printing the materials that you can reflect with your teams and have your own workshops on it. And what it's important here to say that is, of course, one that while we suggest it as a full 7 steps methodology, of course, different tools can be used as standalone materials depending on the status you are currently in. And what I also want to highlight here is that, of course, as it follows also the Living Lab approach, it has highly iterative nature. So this is not static, but rather dynamic methodology, meaning that we, of course, suggest that you revisit as changes, needs are changing, challenges are changing, people might change. So we suggest also to revisit this methodology every 4 to 6 months. So very quickly, the LIFE-BECKON platform will be one-stop shop platform that everything related with the project will be available soon. So please keep connected, stay connected with a LinkedIn page in case you want to have updates on that. And also in the meantime, all the materials I presented, including the materials of the Open Innovation Journey methodology, the webinars, the recording of the webinars, but also the video lessons can be found on our newly launched ENoLL Living Laboratories Academy, so our ENoLL Capacity Building Online platform. What you all have to do is register with the link or the QR code, and you can have direct access, open and free access to the course, having all the materials there. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Alina. So where the open innovation journey is really strong in terms of a methodology is in the integration of stakeholders. And so I obviously straight away start trying to match the Living Lab integrative process with this methodology as well, and then thinking about where can the morphological box come in. So I suppose where the morphological box is really, really strong is also in identifying barriers and helping participants to overcome barriers. So there's lots of different methodologies, and it's the knowing, I suppose, what's the right tool at what point is really key. So in terms of the open innovation journey and how it actually applies to energy communities, we're really looking forward to testing that as part of the Open Lab projects, which is a project that I have been involved with for the last 3 years. And it's actually the subject of the next presentation. So I'm going to flow through to the next presentation without the questions, if that's okay, Alina. And if you do have questions about LIFE-BECKON, do put them into the chat there. So I'm just going to let you know a little bit about a project that actually comprises, well, 3 different living labs. You can go to the next slide. Across 3 different countries. It's across Tartu in Estonia, Pamplona in Spain, and Genk in Belgium. And it's called the Open Lab project. So it's all about positive energy neighborhoods, open innovation, and using a living lab approach to achieve that. But what it really tries to do is develop energy communities at the end of the positive energy neighborhoods. So there's a very important relationship between positive energy neighborhoods and energy communities. But the first step in a positive energy neighborhood is to retrofit buildings. So I'm going to give you the case example here from Pamplona, and to explain their journey and how they have gone from renovating buildings to developing an energy community using a living lab approach. So if you go to the next slide, you can keep going. This is the ambition of Open Lab to renovate. And as I mentioned, it's happening in 3 cities. Wonderful. And this is, if you just go back to Pamplona, just one step back. Wonderful. Okay, so you can see here there's a district in Pamplona. It's called Rochapea district. And within there was 2 neighborhoods that we started looking at in terms of renovation. And the San Pedro buildings were social housing owned by the city that have been renovated. So there's a number of different partners in this particular project, ranging from industry, local government, university, and lots of research as well. So next slide. And you can see the before and after here of this San Pedro building. The renovation has been concluded, and they're really starting now with putting furniture in and finding the tenants for the building. Next slide. And the new tenants are actually going to be people with disabilities, but they're also going to include students to come and live in this building. And they are engineering and social work students that are actually going to mentor and help some of the other residents in the building to help them understand how the different technologies that have been installed and how to use their energy and how to participate in this eventual energy community. Agreements are being prepared with different partners, so it's a constant evolving situation with different partners, and there are many different associations involved and people on the ground. So it's a very dynamic and exciting project, and a really nice example of how a pen can develop with an energy community. So next slide. So the Pamplona City Council have developed a community transformation office, the sustainability department there. And this comprises mainly three actors: the Municipal Energy Agency, the Open Lab project, which are responsible for environmental education mostly, and then also a department who are responsible for urban ecology. So this combination of actors has come together in this community transformation office. And I'm just going to look at the role of the Living Lab and what they actually do in reality in this combination in the next slide. We're just going to look at the middle here now and look at the role of the Living Lab. So really their role is in supporting the development of an energy community, which I'm going to describe in a minute or two. But their role is really in training the core group, in developing statutes, business plan, and the legal constitution for the energy community, and also developing a citizen assembly. That was one example of a social innovation that helped to bring people into this particular constellation. And of course, there needs to be registration with the government of Navarra. So there's a lot of things happening here, and the Living Lab has had that role in developing this for the city. Next slide. This just describes all the different districts in the city of Barcelona. So, or not Barcelona, Pamplona, excuse me. And you can see the different districts. The green ones are the ones where the energy communities have been set up and are in place, and the red ones are the ones that are coming in 2025. So the Rochapea district, the one at the top, is where actually the Living Lab has been working. So we have a real concrete example of how a Living Lab works side by side with a district that wants to develop or that is developing an energy community. Next slide. And so the energy community itself, which is going to comprise all of these different districts, is called, I'm not fluent in Spanish, but Arotea is the name of it, I believe. Any of our Spanish colleagues can correct me on the pronunciation. But it has 81 members so far, 73 people. You can see the breakdown there. There's 8 companies involved as well. And the objective is to replicate that amongst all these different districts in Pamplona to create this energy community. So this is happening now from district to district. Next slide. So the City Council have installed PV across many of the different buildings, and 80% of the energy that comes from that will go to the energy community, but 10% is aimed to go to citizens who are considered to be in energy poverty. So that's the social innovation aspect of this particular energy community. Next slide. And there's also been an agreement with an electric car, a not-for-profit cooperative in the neighbourhood. And 2 cars in this Rochapea district have been made available for members of this particular energy community. So you join as a member for €60 a year, and you can use these cars. So again, we see where mobility and energy communities are go hand in hand and are really key. Next slide. Keep going, yeah. So these are some examples of the social innovation that's being driven through the Living Lab in the particular areas. So their role is really to activate the different citizens and the different potential prosumers. Their role is in informing and raising awareness and collecting data. And this is where the innovation comes as well. So new innovative social projects can be created all the time. Keep going to the next slide. And some examples of some of the socially innovative projects that have been started by this Living Lab and will be also part of the future energy communities are very connected with art and murals and engaging local community in the Living Lab through these types of co-design activities and painting, etc. There's some really nice stories to tell and really nice videos. So I would say go to the Open Lab website to check out some of these really nice sustainability stories. Next slide. Keep going. Yeah. These are all the examples of the social impact. And there's also digital solutions included as well. So they've created these 3D viewers and these maps of the city where people can actually log in and they can provide and participate through these digital solutions. So just in summary, what's the role of the Living Lab in this? It's really to manage the expectations of the citizens on the ground, because they have similar to described in the information office in Turin as well. There is, there's a local office where people can come and ask for information about the positive energy neighbourhood, about the Living Lab, and that will be expanded for the energy community as well. So this enables citizens to come in, and it enables this integration with all these different stakeholders. So the role of the Living Lab also is in facilitating legal advisors with citizens, and discussion with all the different public bodies, because there's a lot of information and there's a lot of technical barriers and a lot of administration skills needed to deal with these DSOs. So, but there's a real culture of developing socially innovative approaches and projects, and it's a really, really nice example in Rochapea and in Pamplona. I'm looking forward to going to visit there in May, and we're going to be running a workshop on how we're going to actually bring lots of these different tools that we've talked about today to Pamplona with us and help these different districts and the city in their development of their energy community. So that's it from me. I don't know if there's any specific questions. Some nice comments there, that it's a very interesting project and showing how the scale up will happen in the city. And how is the original REC taking on this activity in other districts? Yeah, so it's been led by the city. So in that way, they have that stakeholder there, so they can actually, have this development in the districts because they have the Pamplona city. So it's important to have the right stakeholders around the table. It's very key. Okay, so keep putting your questions in the chat, and we'll come back and discuss them. We have 2 more presentations left. We're not doing too bad for time. But I would like now to introduce Konstantinos, who is from the Smart Living Lab in Western Macedonia. Konstantinos is part of the Energy and Environment Working Group, and he has a really nice example as well of how a research-focused living lab started with a European project on energy communities and has now set up a test bed and living lab to really experiment with developing an energy community on a local university level. And then he'll tell us the story about how that's going to be developed further to develop energy communities. So handing over to you, Konstantinos.
Thank you for the introduction, Fiona. I'm happy to be here, part of this webinar. I don't know if we can start with the presentation. Okay. Today I'm going to discuss you about the best practices in developing energy communities, the cases of Greece, Croatia, Bulgaria, and North Macedonia, and I'm going to present you our living lab and how it can be engaged as a testbed for energy communities. So let's move to the next slide. Let's skip this one because this is the content of the presentation for time reasons. So the Smart Living Lab, the next slide, it is established at the students' dormitories of University of Western Macedonia here in Greece, and has become a member of ENoLL since 2022. The main characteristic of our living lab is that it contains certain testing equipment in an area where actual students are currently living. The testing infrastructure involves rooftop PVs with battery energy storage system, hybrid inverters, loads such as EV charging stations, electronic loads, and enhanced measuring and control systems such as weather station, humidity, temperature sensors, power analyzers, smart plugs, and smart meters. Our research activities include the testing of different demand response strategies, Efficient control strategies of combined renewable energy sources with storage systems, provision of grid services, and so on. The vision of our Living Lab is to be transformed into the first energy community in Greece with social housing, which is quite innovative, speaking about the energy communities, at least in Greece. So let's discuss about the origin of energy communities. Looking backward, next slide, please. In the previous decades, the electricity sector supply and support have been, the previous one, have been recognized as the largest emission contributors in EU. Therefore, to reduce all these CO2 emissions, the concept was to rely on renewable energy sources and mainly to small and medium scale. Therefore, this concept is very compatible to the high decentralized concept of creating new renewable energy sources. And the concept of energy communities are also compatible with this direction of the European Union. Many energy communities objectives have been already reported, such as raising the public awareness about renewable energy sources, increasing the acceptance of the energy transition, advocating self-sufficiency, reducing the dependency on national grids, and promoting sustainability. However, except from all these positive issues that have been presented already, there is a number of issues which are in the next slide that should be addressed due to the highly complexity of the energy communities. The issues can be classified as technical, financial, and social ones. For example, in the technical issues, we can identify the location of the assets and the controllability issues. In the financial sector, we have highlighting the lack of proper financial instruments and the fair distribution of the revenues or energy within the members of the energy community. While finally, regarding the social ones, it is the public perception and willingness to support and participate in the energy communities, including the institutional support. Here, for example, I have included two photos. On our left hand, we can see a photo where people are protesting against the installation of new photovoltaics. And on the right screen, we can see a group of sheep that are fed on the ground of a PV installation. Therefore, we can see that the actual barriers are faced in the members of the energy communities. This is the present situation, so we can move forward to the future. I have here a graph which is in the next slide about 2050. Where we can see that the actual consumers can become active traders in order to trade their own produced electricity and consumed energy. In the different colors of the European map, we can see the production in terawatt hours and the possible provision of services by collecting households, small enterprises, and public entities. For example, in Greece, this case is only for 21 terawatt hours, while in Germany this is increased to 294 terawatt hours. So we have a large difference among the different European countries. On the left hand, we can see the potential per category, including the production technologies, solar and wind, and flexibility demand services, which can be addressed by millions of citizens. From all this data, we can conclude that the energy communities seem to be highlighted. Now, moving forward, I'm going to present you very quickly a European project that the University of Western Macedonia participates, which is Sun Sharing project funded by GIS, which is a German corporation for international cooperation. The project duration is 4 years. It started at 2018 until 2022. The consortium included 4 different countries: Greece, Croatia, North Macedonia, and Bulgaria. And the goals were to support and guideline the development of energy communities and communicate and promote the crowdfunding scheme, which can be perceived as a means of social financing. The crowdfunding is a modern, innovative financing tool where many investors can participate with a small amount, being members of the energy community, for financing, for example, a new renewable energy project. The investors receive back an interest rate. Therefore, the energy community can fund through this way an expensive project without needing a bank lending, which is usually have very high interest rates. And in the meantime, by using this financial tool, the members of the energy community can be strengthened and the social character of the energy community can be highlighted. Some good examples of crowdfunding are included in the next slide. In the first, we can see Torales in France, which was the first campaign to involve cross-border platform collaboration in Europe. We can see here that 800,000 euros had been raised for 3 years with an interest rate of 5%. So we can see here that we had a willingness of more than 400 participants, investors, to participate in this project. While on the second case, we can see Choles in the Netherlands. This is a company that rents out solar PV systems, which can be installed at the rooftop of households. Here, more than 1 million euros have been raised from almost 300 investors with an interest rate of 6%. And this one was perceived as a high-risk, high-gain project. Within sun sharing, we have also identified some good examples of energy communities, which are presented in the next slide. We can see in Greece, we have the example of Minoan Energy. This is an energy community of more than 1,000 members, including physical persons, companies, the region of Creta Island, and several Cretan municipalities. We have 2 photovoltaic systems aggregating 1.4 megawatt peak photovoltaic power, and the Minoan Energy community uses the virtual net metering scheme in order to distribute the revenues, the energy produced among the members, with a focus on vulnerable families, which were the earthquake victims. In North Macedonia, we have something like an energy community, which is a community development institute comprising by almost 50 members, and including the municipality of Brevnica. We have just a small PV system of 12 kilowatt peak, mainly used for the self-consumption of the office buildings. However, they want to foster co-investment schemes for energy poor households in the future. In Croatia, we have the ZEZ Sun Our Energy. This energy community comprises of 174 members, including organization, small medium enterprises, and physical persons. This energy community owns 200 kilowatt peak photovoltaic at the rooftop of the city market of Krivenci for selling energy mainly. While in Bulgaria, which is the last good example of that I want to present you today, we have 73 members, where we have 67 citizens and 6 small medium enterprises. At the Grabovo city, they have built a photovoltaic system of 100 kilowatt peak, and they used the crowdfunding scheme in order to raise 180,000 Bulgarian leva for promoting municipal development and encourage the local projects. Moving forward, as a conclusion from this example, for these good examples, it is that in these specific areas we have a diverse maturity level of the energy communities. There are cases, for example, in North Macedonia, they don't have the regulatory framework. In Croatia, they have the main regulations, but some sub-laws and rule books are still under development. While in Bulgaria, very recently, at the December of 2023, they have the recent regulation about legislation about the energy communities, and they have identified the lack of communication between the stakeholders. I want now to start to Greece because Greece is, I think, a country more representative regarding the European case, because we have in Greece too many established energy communities, but very few are operational. For example, we can see here in this left-hand pie charts that only 21 to 28% of the commercial and 7.2% of the self-production ones are electrified, and this is the share of the capacity in terms of percentages. While on the right-hand figure, we can see the actual requests in terms of capacity and aggregated number. So speaking about numbers and following the data from the single DSO in Greece, almost 6.5 thousand requests have been received, while 1,800 have been only electrified, which correspond to 1.3 gigawatt, almost out of 5 gigawatt. So we can see here that we have an actual issue. The issue is the lack of enough electrical space due to grid congestion issues, the saturation of the distribution grid, and the lack of proper control of local parameters such as voltage and short-circuit currents. Therefore, moving to the next slide, as we have identified the main technical issues, here comes the Living Lab that can provide the solutions, some solutions to these issues. So here we have the case of the Smart Living Lab of the University of Western Macedonia. We have available data from renewable energy sources generation, storage and electrical load, and the real consumptions patterns from the students, which can be representative citizens of an energy community. So by engaging the smart plugs and smart meters, an enhanced controllability of the assets can be achieved. And therefore, the energy exchange with the grid can be minimized or even zero in order to solve grid saturation issues. Furthermore, by developing new control strategies for the PV and the energy storage, the battery energy storage systems, novel grid services can be provided, such as power smoothing, short-circuit capabilities, inertia, voltage regulation, which contribute in this way to a new concept of energy community, and the energy community can be perceived as a grid facilitator and not as a problem of the distribution grid. Furthermore, some novel energy market practices can also be implemented, introducing novel concepts such as virtual energy coins and blockchain peer-to-peer trading mechanisms. In order to conclude the presentation and moving to the next slide, the energy communities have the potential to become a powerful tool for the local empowerment, support the energy independence and the environmental sustainability, since they promote sustainable, democratic and locally produced energy. The citizens are encouraged to actively participate, and here we should include the vulnerable ones, such as low-income citizens, and fight against the energy poverty. In order to achieve these targets, the local municipality and the local business should support these actions. Regarding the financing, new financial instruments, such as the crowdfunding, can be applied, which have enhanced the social character and can contribute as an alternative to the expensive bank lending.
Thank you very much, Konstantin. We're going to try to finish up if we can, because we're actually running over now about 20 minutes, I'm afraid. But it's a really, really important presentation in terms of lessons learned, and really interesting to see, how the Smart Living Lab is going to address these concerns. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
As I said, unfortunately, we're running over, but we do have 10 minutes. So, and if any of you can stay a little bit longer, I'd really encourage you to do so, because Craig has stayed up late in order to join us. He's actually at Monash University in Australia, and his colleagues from India are also online. So I'm going to hand over to Craig, and he's going to tell us about this cellular project in India and the really important work that's being done there using a Living Lab approach. And then hopefully some of you can stay a little bit longer just to have a discussion about what the key critical points are that bring all of these examples together. So sorry for running over on time. That's my fault entirely. So Craig, hand to you.
All right. Hey, thanks, Fiona. Hi, everybody. I'm Craig Burton. I'm a research manager in the architecture department at Monash University. Monash is Australia's largest university. And I was going to present this together with Sarkat Saraf, but he's unwell. He's on the call, but I'm going to give the whole presentation. Sarkat is based in Ahmedabad in Gujarat state in India, and I've worked with him now for a number of years. He is part of an academic network of architects and others concerned with buildings design and building performance. And this project is quite an advanced project that's been supported by the Global Buildings Performance Network, which is an NGO originally from France, and of course Monash University. The front picture that I've got here gives a couple of examples of previous programs that are somewhat like what we are putting together. At the bottom left there is a gentleman painting a roof white. That's an example, if you just go back, that's an example of a low-tech form of building energy performance improvement that reduces cooling energy. That's one of our partners now. The Mahila Housing Trust provides microfinance for that. The middle one is the Selco Foundation, which is promoting rooftop solar in India, which has been very slow on the uptake. And the article on the right, there's the Times of India showing you quite a large problem, which is that discoms, the electricity suppliers, are having trouble getting solar onto roofs. They're having to handhold people, and that's where the cellular system comes in. Next slide. Thank you. Alrighty, so it is a research program. Monash University is supporting this and has done. This program's actually enjoyed about $500,000 US of funding so far, and it hasn't actually started. So unlike the other presentations today, this is an upcoming research program that's actually going to set up a number of living labs and run up to 50 socio-technological trials. And the governing research questions at the sort of highest level of these here, how is it that we can use action research techniques like living labs to support policy reform? So our target beneficiary of all this is actually state governments in India. And more to the point, how can specific, carefully designed bits of research be effective in serving up kind of on-demand evidence, not falsified evidence, but evidence in support of policy reform that the government needs. And then, of course, if it works for one experiment at one site, can this expand and scale through government-to-government promotion? There's been successful programs like this in Australia to do with rooftop solar promoted government-to-government. I'm going to hit the button again. Yeah, so there's another lab here at Monash that is working with us, and just a week ago, its manager posted this very important comment: technology needs to be what people are comfortable using, and it needs to be aligned with the things that support other priorities in their lives. So some of you may know Yolanda Strangers. This is the spirit of the living labs we're putting together. It's in the poorest housing in India. The people in there have never had 24/7 electricity or 24/7 continuous pipe water. It's critically important that they are engaged and motivated and involved and co-producing the outcomes of these living labs. Next button. Okay, so here's the LLIP that you've seen today already in a couple of presentations. This is a very attractive process for us because we've actually been able to take this, and I was trained in using this system through ENoLL. And if you hit the button again, it shows that there's the classic top part of the process, the integrative process, which starts at 1 and it ends at 8. But in fact, you can move back and forth. So if we introduce a stove into a household and the occupants don't like it, an electric stove, we have a concept here of being able to move back and forth in order to co-produce a better outcome with that socio-technological intervention. And the blocks of text along the bottom here have been formulated by us as a way of putting the LLIP to work with policy as its goal, or policy support as its goal. We can't lobby and we can't tell politicians what to do, but we can generate research outcomes and have them on offer. Next slide. Yeah. Okay, so this is a very large and complicated slide, so I'll just kind of quickly talk you through it. Our process involves using innovation in all of its diversity and beauty, and then determining what's going to be strategic for local government policy implementation, and then, of course, what's affordable. So, as I said, the cohort is not a large income cohort. We need to find technologies that work in affordable housing. What we then do is we generate a long list of experiments. So we have 50 experiments. We, at this point, can't proceed any further until we have government buy-in. So we can't obtain funding or develop the research design any further until we actually have a signed-on government entity. Okay, so there's no point proceeding. We aren't going to build it and hope they will come. We will only proceed if we have a government customer on board. Then what happens is the living labs, as I explained before, are the who and the what. The towers shown below there are classic Indian social housing. Those ones have solar, unusually. And then, as I've said, the outcomes, or the what in the whole picture, is policy support. And so we hope to produce policy briefs, social capital, and most importantly, risk reduction. So politicians love new ideas, but they don't like risk. So our process here is to sort of demonstrate that innovations can be done safely. Next slide. Thanks. And the context, as I said, is affordable housing in India. So these blocks here are recent constructions of housing units. So each one of those on the left is a unit. The Indian government's going to build 30 million of these in the next 2 years. To 2030. They've already built 12 million of them, which is about 20,000 of these apartments a day, right? So this is a very large project. This cohort represents a huge amount of carbon and steel and concrete. And also they're becoming wealthier. So they are the poorest in India, but their wealth is increasing by a kind of a factor of 8 over the next 5 years alone. So they're a very attractive cohort for energy management. And listed on the right here are several national policies. They're some of the best in the world for energy performance, but the problem is they have trouble being implemented. So there's a building codes there, are very well designed, but they're not being implemented in the states of India. So part of the policy reform that we envisage is implementation. And this is our program. We ran a huge scoping study. We then did outreach in the stage before the current stage. At the moment, we're looking to start our program in 2 Indian states that are shown there. And then we envisage these labs being used wherever the government is receptive to them. Next slide. This is 36 of the 50 trials. So what you see here are small pictures from each of the long list trials. And as you can see, very broad scope. Everything from apps to energy, literacy, solar, passive design. If you hit the button, it'll pull up one of the examples. So this is what's known as PDEC. It's a vernacular or kind of ancient technique for cooling in buildings, reduces the cost of cooling. The next one. Yeah, just hit the button again. Okay, so this is, okay, the one before that was balcony solar, which is again a cost of electricity reduction. This last one here showing tanks is a demand side management intervention. So we will set up a trial where the electricity utility will be able to control when these tanks are filled. It's a large load for any multifamily housing building. Next slide. And this is the network we've established. So at the end of the second phase of our program, and through a number of government engagement and engagement events more broadly, we have a huge collection of builders in the commercial sector and solution suppliers. We have a whole range of government entities that have provided MOUs and letters of support. We have several community groups, including the Mahila Housing Trust of my first slide, and a number of academic organizations. All of them are in India, except for, of course, for Monash and Heriot-Watt University in Scotland. The people actually doing this work who will build cellular and make cellular work will all be in India. It'll be an Indian entity. And if you hit the next slide, I'll quickly explain what that will be. Oh, I'm sorry, this is our team. So we already have a team. In fact, this is a bit out of date. There's even more people on here. But this shows mostly academics and experts. Yep, go forward. And this is the government's design. The way the secretariat, as it will be called, will be set up as a commercial entity, probably in Delhi. And this entity will interface with the government and oversee the execution of our living labs. The living labs will be run by the IITBs and the IITGNs of India. The technical universities will be the people who execute the labs. And then the outcomes, again, are managed by the Secretariat in its ongoing dialogue with the government. Next slide. That's it. So if you want to hear more about this, you can read about it on gbpn.org/cellular, or please email me, craig.burton@monash.edu. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about the program and where it's going. Thank you.
Well done, Craig. You did that super fast, but your slides are very clear. In the meantime, I've changed rooms because I got kicked out of where I was. But so you can see from this presentation how it's really important that we get energy communities right, and that we have socially innovative energy communities, because the global south is looking to the global north in terms of methodology, in terms of tools. And, you know, we have a responsibility to support each other and to help the global south to also have a successful energy transition. So the scale in India is really just overwhelming sometimes in terms of the potential. So having energy communities, having energy projects, energy communities that really bring value back to the citizens and where they can have ownership of energy is hugely important. So I don't want to underestimate the value of the learning that we have here in Living Labs in the Global North, and how we can translate that now to what's happening in other continents. So we have a Q&A round here, or a discussion round. I know it's already 1:05. If you need to leave, it's no problem at all. If you have some burning questions, please do drop them in the chat, or put your hand up, and we can have an opening discussion. So I'm going to start it. I think one question, and I think Anthony asked it there, was about will these projects continue after the EU funding is pulled? So I think that's really, really important. We're all doing European projects. We're all being funded by other organizations. And how do we ensure, that it just doesn't end when the funding ends? How do we ensure that that really the Living Lab approach enables and empowers the people on the ground to actually, to continue this development. So I think that's a really important point for the future of energy communities and for Living Labs as well. So thanks to some of the colleagues in Pamplona who've answered that question and explained, that it's really being driven by thankfully the vision and insight of Pamplona City Council in that particular example. So so there's questions. Could you please answer any questions concerning Lantern and the morphological box? That's from Ulrika. Does anybody have any specific questions? At this point, you can put your camera on and put your hand up. We can work from there. I'll hand it to the floor. Agnieszka.
Hello, I'm Agnieszka from Kraków Technology Park, Poland, and we are part of the European network of Living Labs for many, many years already, I guess more than 10. And what I would like to say, I'm not the expert on the topic, but I was listening very carefully because we are having some digitally driven circular projects here in Kraków, but definitely thanks for the great informative and inspiring presentations. I have some institutions that really focus on this energy communities. I would like to link you, but I will definitely get through the ENoLL to get, some inspirations for them, some best practices and recommendation how to sort it out in Poland. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the comment. Would any of the speakers like to make any comments or ask any questions? And Alina, you can stop sharing the screen there just so that we get a full kind of picture of who's here. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I can make a comment. The ENoLL Living Lab design or process is already started being used in India. So I'm aware of a Living Lab set up by German GIZ in Karnataka. So they really are, I think, the first to use this method in the Indian context. Before, when I was talking about Heriot-Watt University in Scotland, they're actually the first people I know of to run any kind of living lab in India, and they did so in 2020, an energy living lab. But it's pretty nascent approach. So yeah. But again, I think it's relevant to the Global South. I think it's a good representative emerging democracy that aligns with many others. So hopefully if this works, we can take cellular further in some form.
Great. And a good link to that then is Saket is asking about digital twins. Are there any living labs? There are a lot of living labs working on digital twins. In fact, even in Pamplona, they have a digital twin aspect, and I can also think of several other ones that have digital twins. So Limerick, for example, in Ireland, are working with digital twins, and so yeah, we can find some specific examples of that. Does anybody else have any examples of where digital twins are being used in the development of energy communities? Lena.
Hi everyone. So yes, my lab in Poznań, Poland would be that one. We are actually starting this project in a smaller city in our region that has one of the results is to actually have the digital twin in energy and climate change, because this This area is after coal area that is in the point of transition into renewable energy using hydrogen and photovoltaic and other renewable sources. So we are going to actually develop a digital twin to show the transition and transformation of the region itself.
Great. So we'll put you in touch with Saket as well, Evelina, and you can exchange on those approaches. Brilliant. So we're going to just we're only going to take another 5 minutes. We're going to absolutely finish at 1:15, no question. So coming back to Alicia and to Andre. So is there anything you'd like to ask any of the other speakers, or is there anything that kind of stood out for you in terms of, let's say, the tools, any of the tools that were presented? Do you think that some of them could have been useful to you or would be useful to you in the future, trying to, you know, really develop this energy community approach? I'll go with Alicia first.
Yes, Fiona, I was excited in hearing all this presentation and all these labs. So I hope that the Torino City would join this kind of experiments of project also for Rex. I hope to be part of your groups of researchers in order to take different input from the different cities. So I think I will reflect on what I heard today, and we will apply in Torino. I only would like to answer a question that was lost in chat, but I don't understand very well the meaning of the answer of the question. Sorry. Are people renewable energy have new safety hazards? Are people made aware of them? What about hazards in REC? I can't understand. So if Bhumitra Tulsi can explain the questions, I can try to answer.
Is she still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
What I wanted to say is that when you have a number of small producers, from an authority perspective, it creates lots of fluctuations. And one of the things that I'm from mechanical engineering is that it creates lots of fluctuations of frequency on the national grid. And fluctuations on the national grid is something that we always need to be very careful, because that can lead to safety hazards for both houses and industries. Okay, and very often I'm very careful with renewable energy projects because we have more factors to control compared we had just a couple of power stations. Okay, so that's why and also with renewable energy, there are new safety hazards, especially linked with the hot surfaces and all these. And there's a need also for educating people as well for this. Yeah.
Yes,
this is what
thank you.
I want.
Thank you. Now I understood, and I can assure we are aware of the problem, and this is why in Italy the national authority is pushing us to create to search an equilibrium between producers and consumers to avoid this kind of problems. We are working at the national level in order to face this kind of technical problems on the grid. And this is also why we are trying to create culture between peoples in order to make them aware of the necessity to produce and consume in the same moment. So thank you. It's a good questions, and we are trying to give good answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Probably last comment from my side. I'm very happy with this seminar. I never saw renewable energy as a social project. I was very happy with the first presentation by Andre. Why I had this question whether these findings were presented to the policymakers is that I previously worked with the Ministry of Finance. And very often the Ministry of Finance, they want to know how they can have this public, private, and now we can say community collaboration for development projects. So I never saw this social dimension of renewable energy. I'm very happy with this.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the comments. So we'll ask you for feedback. If anybody's still online there that has a phone, you can scan this QR code that I think Alina, one of the girls, will put up on the screen in a sec, and just give us a little bit of feedback on the webinar, and you can be constructively critical if you wish. And then just to close, I just want to thank everybody again. And I'd ask everybody just to leave one word in the chat and to say, how can Living Labs really drive a socially innovative energy communities? One word, what's the key word? And we'll leave it in the chat. And